Over the last month, I have found a new PC gaming rabbit hole to fall down and blow all of my retirement on. This time, it's flight sim.
I can't see where the airfield is. Oh, there's a tree. Oh!
Why are there trees right in front of the airfield? And in today's video, we're gonna have a look at some budget gear all the way up to like mid-high-end gear, I guess. Now, one of the reasons the flight sim peripheral rabbit hole is so deep is because there are a bunch of different use cases that all require different peripheral setups. For example, if you're really into commercial flight, you could build an Airbus cockpit in your house with a huge amount of panels that control all of the various functions of the airplane. On a side note, the buttons are one of the big reasons why I'm so excited about this topic. Oh, I mean, just look at all of those buttons. I'm sure they click real good. And then there's also combat flight sim, which ranges from old-timey airplanes all the way up to modern fighter jets. And for modern fighter jets, you can build some crazy cockpits where you even have your radar and targeting control and stuff as physical peripherals outside of the game, which is really cool, again, with many amazing buttons. And then there's also space sim, which has its own unique set of requirements. Now, there is quite a lot of overlap. Like, you can build a combat flight sim setup and then use it for like commercial planes or whatever. But it is interesting to see how focused you can get with it. Now, in today's video, I'm going to be focusing on the core of a combat flight sim setup, which is the HOTAS, which stands for hands-on throttle and stick. So this is a joystick and a dedicated throttle, hopefully with a bunch of nice switches. Although the most budget option doesn't have a dedicated one of those, but still. On that note, let's start off with the budget options. And the most affordable option we're looking at in today's video is this, the Logitech Extreme 3D Pro. And you probably recognize this joystick because Logitech has been making it since the Paleolithic era. In fact, I'm pretty sure I had one of these when I was growing up. And the fact that they've been making it since Nero was emperor, it is now very cheap. I bought this one for 50 Canadian dollars new. I mean, you can barely buy a couple of eggs for that these days. And for that 50 Canadian dollars new, you're getting a perfectly serviceable joystick. There's some metal effect plastic on it. You've got a bunch of buttons on the side and on the joystick, and it's a joystick. It does joystick things. Now, the joystick is quite wobbly on center, but that's kind of a byproduct of its granny hip joint socket design. And aside from there not being nearly enough buttons for more hardcore flight sim games like DCS, they also have a real plastic toy button feel to them. Definitely not the kind of buttons that'll cream my undies over. And then, in my opinion, one of the biggest shortcomings of it is the pathetic little throttle. I mean, this is less the kind of action involved in controlling a machine of death and more something you do digging lint out of your belly button. It's just a bit sad. But again, it's 50 Canadian dollars, which is so affordable. And for that, it does a lot right. It works very well just flat on a desk. Its feet are very effective at keeping it in place while you're gaming with it, which is not a given for these. We'll get into that a bit later. But for 50 Canadian dollars, you're getting a perfectly serviceable joystick, which apparently is bulletproof. As far as I understand it, these are wildly reliable. But with that, let's move on to the next one. And the next tier up that we're looking at in this video is the Thrustmaster T16000M, which you can get in two configurations. You can either just get the joystick on its own, or like I did, you can get a full HOTAS, which includes a separate throttle. Now, before my first interaction with this Thrustmaster joystick, I was kind of expecting the joystick to be very similar in quality and action to the Logitech one. I was thinking that the main thing that you were paying for was the separate throttle. But the Thrustmaster stick is surprisingly more competent. Despite also being a granny hip socket design, there's a much more satisfying action as you get off the center from the stick, and it's also more precise feeling in the middle. It doesn't have that same wild wobble of the Logitech stick. The Thrustmaster also has way more buttons on the base of the joystick. However, the Logitech stick gets more buttons on the top of the stick. But when you include all the buttons on the throttle, you get way more flexibility when it comes to key bindings with the Thrustmaster HOTAS. But that makes sense because you've got two peripherals as opposed to one. Now, on the note of that throttle, I was very excited to have a dedicated throttle to replace the teeny little button thing on the Logitech stick. But in my opinion, the throttle is actually the weakest bit of the Thrustmaster setup. Oh, that's not a nice action. It's both sticky and too loose at the same time somehow. The throttle action on the Thrustmaster feels like the pump action on a really cheap Super Soaker. Despite all the buttons and the novelty of having a girthy hand-filling throttle, it just feels too much like cheap crap for me to recommend anybody buying one. Especially when compared so directly to how nice the Thrustmaster joystick feels. But maybe that's what all of these gaming throttles feel like. Well, let's have a look at some higher end options. Oh my god, this is so exciting. Now for the high-end HOTAS, I bought a Winwing Orion 2. Now there are a surprising amount of options in the high-end flight sim space like Virpil, VKB, and even Moza recently brought out some crazy flight sim gear. But the reason that I went with Winwing was I liked the layout of the Orion and they had a very aggressive Black Friday sale, which meant I paid 580 CAD as opposed to 770. And first impressions were heavy. It's so heavy. Now compared to the budget options, which you just kind of pull out of a box, there is some pretty serious assembly required with the Orion. And build quality wise, aside from the joystick, which feels like a thing that was ripped out of an actual airplane, and the wildly satisfying switches on the throttle, which I'll give you a listen to in a little bit, but the actual body of the throttle was way more plasticky than I was expecting. Aside from that, I was also worried that I wouldn't fully be able to satiate my switch fetish, so I also bought the takeoff panel, which again, aside from the switch quality, was more plasticky than I was expecting. But aside from that, all of the action on everything is amazing. The joystick, it feels like a thing you would find in an actual airplane. The cam rail system that the joystick uses feels buttery smooth and it's wildly customizable. This stuff does not have the same Toys R Us vibe as the budget gear. But with that, let's attach everything to some table mounts that I bought off of Amazon so that we can give this gear a spin. And then once you've set up the hardware comes the real fun, because with a huge amount of buttons comes a huge amount of key binding. It took me a solid 40 minutes to bind most of what I thought I needed in War Thunder. But as you'll see, this is kind of a never-ending process.
1 hour later.
Okay, so I'm finally ready to test this setup. Straight off the bat, I wouldn't recommend this mounting system that I'm using here, because when it's set up, there is quite a lot of sharp steel around your gentleman's vegetables, and that's not a great combination. I might suffer some permanent reproductive damage using this, so that's, yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. But I like the format that this is all set up. I like having this control panel here. The software is a little bit annoying, but we're finally at a point where we've set it up. We're in War Thunder here. Oh, I need headphones. I then spent another 20 minutes struggling with key bindings. It really felt like War Thunder was just ignoring any of the inputs I was changing. Okay, so I can't figure that out. I'll deal with that later. I just want to try and fly the plane at this point. So we're looking in front of us. That's what we've got. Now, as far as I remember my bindings, I think I press. That doesn't do what I thought it would do. Oh, that's shooting, I see. Nope, back to binding hell, because the buttons were definitely not doing what I wanted them to do. It was really confusing though, because it felt like some of them worked, which led to me sitting for a solid 10 minutes thinking I had turned the plane on, just waiting for something to happen. Am I just waiting for nothing to happen? Because it still hasn't turned on. I've played realistic mode a bunch before, and I've never had this problem. I don't understand. And with that, let's have a quick listen to how I bound the startup sequence. And then when I finally got the plane moving, I made a terrible realization about the rudder pedal binding. Wait, what? Why is that making me look? No. Wait, what?
What? We'll get there. We'll get there. This is part of the process. For some reason, this is turn on the airplane. So I was just waiting for no reason, like a dumbass. Oh my god. Okay, okay. Oh, this is already going very poorly. I don't even know if my rudder's working. Ah! Oh my god, this is like brain surgery. Oh, we're good. We're good though. We're getting there. We're getting there. Oh my god, we're about to take off. Oh! Okay, now.
But again, the game ignoring the bindings reared its ugly head because I couldn't get my landing gear up.
The game completely ignores the bindings that I set for this.
But luckily, the problem kind of figured itself out.
Oh. Ah! Oh my, okay, well, we don't have to worry about the landing gear anymore. That's good. Oh, the joystick feels so good. It's a bit too sensitive for my liking. Like, I am probably gonna get the kit where I can kind of modify it. Because I want more resistance. But it feels like a thing. Oh my god, this is so exciting. Okay, so my first takeaway here is that flying without the twist for the rudder is way easier. Because the rudder, like the twist grip, screws everything up. War Thunder doesn't seem to be responding to the bindings of this stuff well, which is kind of weird because at home I've been using just the throttle and the bindings worked perfectly there, but it's kind of on drugs here at the moment. Oh, look at how beautiful the clouds are.
I then forgot that I wasn't playing arcade mode and accidentally coaxed the plane into a flat spin, which is like the airplane equivalent of having a crocodile death roll you.
Pretty sure that a flat spin is one of those things that unless you're a super badass pilot, it's just over. So, yeah, I guess this is how we land.
I then decided to try VR, but like with the key binding, War Thunder was not cooperating. But luckily, after about an hour of struggling,
it worked for a brief, beautiful second. And then I dared change a setting on it, and it just broke everything.
I could get IL-2 running, which was very immersive.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm like in the plane.
Despite that, the tracking did seem to be struggling a little bit because it felt like it wasn't moving with my head accurately, and it was quite stuttery.
I don't like the stuttering at all though.
But whinging about stuttering aside, and despite whatever you guys say, the Meta Quest being an absolute pain in the ass to use with a gaming PC, this may actually be the best use case for VR. I actually think this is an even better use case for VR than sim racing, because just being able to look around helps with your situational awareness so much while dogfighting. Now I just need a VR headset that's actually designed for PC gaming. Big screen beyond, maybe? Wink wink. Now, after that first impression, I spent a couple of days A-Bing between the three setups, using Star Wars Squadrons because it's just quick combat, and honestly, it's really fun with a HOTAS. Any of the three setups really adds to the feeling that you're piloting a vehicle, which is awesome. The Logitech stick is a big step up over using like an Xbox controller, but things start feeling real badass once you add a dedicated throttle. Having both hands filled with peripheral that you can manhandle while zooming between asteroids is amazing. Having said that, the Fisher-Priceness of the Thrustmaster throttle just makes it really difficult for me to recommend. What I would do is I would buy either the Thrustmaster or Logitech joystick, depending on what kind of budget you have available, and then live with just the joystick to see if you're gonna get into the hobby, and then start saving up for a throttle from a big boy brand. And then you can worry about upgrading your joystick later, but I really think that this is the way to go to try and minimize the amount of plastic waste you're producing with that Thrustmaster throttle. Oh, and on a side note, mounting is also an important consideration. The main issue with the Windwing throttle, for example, is that the suction cups that it comes with for a desk does not work well on a smooth desk. It can hold up to vertical force, but it slides around real easy, which is super annoying. And then my other takeaway is that going from the more budget mainstream brands like Thrustmaster or Logitech to something like Windwing is a huge step up in quality. The former feels like it's just a toy, whereas the latter feels like something you'd find in an actual airplane, which makes it so amazing to interact with. Going through the startup sequence of an airplane with this setup induces some real strong adult feelings. If you have a Switch fetish like I do, this is probably one of the best ways to indulge it. Now it makes sense, it's also a lot more expensive, but the modularity of this hobby means that you can upgrade a small bit at a time to get to maximum Switch fetishism. Which brings me to the end of the video. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this and other PC tech related stuff, and until then, thanks for watching. Bye bye.